The Duolingo English test has changed and there is a brand new speaking question that you need to know about. It's called interactive speaking and it looks like this on the test. For this question type, you are having a conversation with one of the Duolingo characters, which means that this new speaking question is quite different than the other speaking questions on this test. So the way that you will prepare for it and the way that you will give your answers is going to be quite different. But don't worry, because in today's video, I'm going to share with you a bunch of tips and a template you can use to answer these questions. Also, at the end of the video, there's going to be some practice questions for you to practice with. But before we talk about these tips and my template, I want to let you know that if you are going to take your Duolingo English test soon and would like to get 10% off your official test, you can by clicking the link below in the video description or go into detready.com/discount. By simply purchasing the test through DET Ready, you can get 10% off your official exam. Okay then, well, let's now talk about the key points of this new interactive speaking question. You are going to have a real-time conversation with a Duolingo character. And when you take the Duolingo English test, it will look like this. This is the Duolingo character who asks you questions for you to answer. Okay, so far it's pretty straightforward. You're going to answer between 6 and 8 questions, and your job is to give expanded answers. When I say expanded answers, what I mean is that you can't just give brief, short answers. You're not going to score high if you do that. Instead, you want to give detailed answers, answering the question fully. Now that might sound pretty tricky, but don't worry, because in this video, I'm going to show you my template, which will make this a lot easier for you. You have 35 seconds to answer each question. And on the official exam, it's going to follow this process. The Duolingo character will ask you a question, and as soon as he or she has finished asking the question, the 35-second timer begins. Then you click record now when you're ready to speak. If you don't click record now, your answer will not be recorded, so make sure you click that button. And the questions are going to be on a variety of topics. When I took the official practice test, I was asked questions on 2 different topics. 4 questions on one topic, 4 questions on the second topic. Here are a bunch of topics that might come up. Topics on the environment, health and lifestyle, or social issues. And if you click on the link somewhere down here in the video description, you can find an extensive list of potential topics and questions. These are all on my VIP program, but I'll make this part free for everyone. So click on that link, it might be very helpful for you. And another really important thing you must know is that you can only listen to the question once. There is no repeat button, and you can't ask the character to repeat the question. So make sure you pay close attention to the question that is being asked. And lastly, you are scored based on your fluency, grammar, vocabulary, and pronunciation. So basically all aspects of speaking. Those were the key points of this question type. You now understand it fully. Now let's take a look at some tips and a framework that you can use to answer these questions. Don't forget, at the end of this video, I'm going to show you some sample questions and answers as well. So for tip number 1, make sure you speak for around 25 to 35 seconds. Remember, you've got to click that record now button to begin speaking, and the timer does begin as soon as the question has been asked. So don't spend too long thinking, try to answer instinctively and aim for between 25 and 35 seconds. You need to give a detailed, structured answer. Don't just give one sentence, brief answers. Instead, give detailed answers to show off your English. At the end of the day, this is an English test, so the more you give Duolingo, the better your score could be. Okay, so how do you give long, detailed answers? Well, you use this framework. It's my new template and I call it the Oreo template. And no, I don't mean the Oreo cookies, although they are delicious. This one is just a template to help you to speak for longer and give more detailed answers. So what is my Oreo template? Well, it is an acronym and it stands for opinion, reason, example, and outcome or conclusion. And I truly believe if you use this template to practice these interactive speaking questions, when you take the test, you will feel a lot more confident. Answering questions in a second language is really tricky, and especially going into detail. So you have to practice, and if you follow a framework like this, it will make your life a lot easier. So let me show you now some examples using this Oreo template. So let's imagine that this was our question. Should schools focus more on creativity than academics? By the way, this is the type of question you will be asked on the interactive speaking question. They seem to be on broad global topics and then ask you for your opinion or for you to describe the situation. So following this Oreo framework, I'll start by giving my opinion. Yes, I think schools should definitely focus more on creativity, not just academics. This is the first part of my Oreo framework. As you can see, I answered the question directly. I just did it in one sentence, but if you want to, you can do it in 2 or more sentences. It doesn't really matter. The point is you give your opinion and answer the question directly. It's also important when you give your opinion to use strong linking words, which clearly state that you are going to share your opinion. In this example, I just used I think, which is a very simple and easy one you can use, but here are a bunch of others that could be used instead. So that's part 1 done, but of course, just by answering the question like this, I still have lots of time left, as this sentence probably only took me 5 seconds to speak. I have to now go into detail to give an expanded answer, which leads me on to part 2 of this template, and it's the reason part. Basically, why do I think what I think? One main reason is that even though academic subjects like maths and science are important, creativity teaches students how to think differently and solve problems in unique ways. Again, it's good to use strong linking phrases here, so here are a bunch you can use to signal that you are giving your reason. I used one main reason is that, but there are a bunch other, as you can see here. Next up, we have letter E, which is for examples. You can give examples from your own personal life. That's probably the easiest way to do it. Or you can give examples from other people's lives or examples of history, etc. It doesn't really matter, but E is just for examples. So let's take a look at my answer right now. Here I gave a personal example. I said, for example, when I was in school, we had an art class where we were asked to design a solution for reducing waste in our community. It made us combine artistic thinking with practical problem solving. Here are a bunch of linking words you can use instead of for example. It's always good to use a variety of these if you are going to give lots of examples throughout this interactive speaking conversation. And the last letter in the Oreo template is the letter O, which stands for outcome. You can also think of this as your conclusion. This would be a nice way to wrap up your answer if you have enough time. As a result, I started looking at everyday problems more creatively, which has helped me a lot in real-life situations. And just like before, here are a bunch of other linking words you can use to signal that you are now going to give your outcome or conclusion. Using linking words like these throughout your answer does make your answer sound a lot more organized and structured, so try to use them if you can. And here is the answer in full. Pause the video if you would like to read it through thoroughly. Just to reiterate what I said earlier, you do not need to use this Oreo framework step by step every single time. You can even just use certain parts if you would like to. However, I think it's a really good framework for you to keep in mind and to practice with, as it will help you to give detailed, expanded answers, which is what Duolingo want to see, and that will help boost your score. Okay, here's a quick tip, and this is for you to buy time if needed. You can use one of these phrases before you give your opinion, just to give yourself a second or 2 extra to think. Remember, you can't listen to the question again, or you can't ask the Duolingo character to repeat the question. So if you need a few seconds extra to think of your answer, because sometimes it could be quite difficult, then use one of these phrases. Later on in this video, I'll show you a practice question which I answered, and I used one of these very naturally to give myself a second extra to think of my answer. So this is a good way to buy some time. And my last tip is to avoid repetition. It's a good idea to try to avoid repeating the same ideas over and over again in the different questions, also the same vocabulary. For the Duolingo English Test or for IELTS or TOEFL, they do not like you to use the same ideas, same words, same grammar, same phrases over and over again. They want to see variety. It says so in the scoring criteria, as you can see right here. So those were some tips and my Oreo template for you to give good, detailed answers. Do you like the Oreo framework? If you do, write Oreo below in the comments. Now you're going to watch me give some sample answers to the questions on the Duolingo English practice test. This will be helpful because you'll see what types of questions Duolingo could ask you, and also you'll see how I answered them using the Oreo framework. The practice test on the Duolingo website is a great way to practice for this exam and this interactive speaking question. However, it does not give you much feedback. So if you would like lessons with me where I give you feedback on your speaking answers as well as your writing answers and all of the other questions as well, head over to vip.detready.com and consider joining. You get lots of benefits when you join this program, including live lessons with me, full courses, and access to my practice platform, which does give you AI feedback as well. All of this is at vip.detready.com, or just click the link somewhere down here in the video description. Okay, anyway, now let me show you these practice questions and my sample answers.
I'd like to ask you a few questions about conversation. Describe how you usually start a conversation with someone new.
So I am terrible at starting a conversation with someone new simply because I'm quite socially awkward and quite shy. However, if I have to start a conversation with someone new, I prefer to ask them about their hobbies rather than their job. Typically, people would start a new conversation with someone new by asking, what do you do? Like, what job do you have? But for me, I don't like asking that question, so I typically ask people what they enjoy doing or what they do in their free time. That's how I start conversations with someone new.
I see. I've got a different question. Tell me about someone you enjoy having conversations with.
So I really enjoy having conversations with my brother. The main reason is that, of course, we know each other extremely well, but not only that, we also have the same interests. We both like the same sports, the same activities, and the same kind of academic subjects. So we have a lot to talk about. It's also very easy to talk to him because he's a good listener and he has lots of information on the subjects that we enjoy to talk about. So that's fun, and yeah, he's the best person to speak to.
I see. Let me ask you another question. Discuss whether you think listening is as important as speaking in a conversation.
Yes, listening is absolutely as important as speaking in a conversation. A lot of people these days don't listen very well. They'd rather just speak or share their own opinions rather than listen to their conversational partner's opinions. Listening is so valuable because you learn so much more if you just stay quiet and listen, and you can gain some real insights into the person you're talking to if you take the time to listen to them.
I see. I have another question. Describe some challenges people face when having conversations in a new language.
Well, besides the obvious problem of speaking in a second language, which is really tricky, another major problem is cultural knowledge or background knowledge. For example, my wife, she is from Korea, but she lives here in the UK with me, and her English is amazing. It's so good. But she has a hard time having a conversation with British people, not because of the language, but because of the background knowledge that she's missing. She doesn't get the context about what is being said.
Thanks for talking about conversation with me. Now I'd like to change topics and ask you a few questions about audiobooks and books on tape. Do you think audiobooks are good for people who dislike reading? Why?
Yes, of course, they are very good for people who dislike reading, because if it was not for audiobooks, then these people would never read or never get the information from a written book. It also means that people who are very busy can listen to audiobooks and learn everything that's in the written version, but through audio, they can listen and learn while they are commuting or doing other aspects of their life. So yes, I think it's very good, especially for those who dislike reading.
Thanks. I've got a different question. Describe some situations where audiobooks might be more useful than printed books.
I mentioned a couple reasons in the previous answer, but for people who are very busy, then listening to an audiobook can be done while they are busy. So, for example, I used to commute to work and I would listen to audiobooks every single day on the commute. It was very difficult for me to read a book while commuting, so listening to the book was a great alternative, and I really enjoyed it too. I also enjoyed listening to the author when they read out their own work. I thought that was really nice.
Interesting. I have another question. In your opinion, what are some of the most popular genres of audiobooks? Why?
I think non-fiction audiobooks are by far more popular than fiction audiobooks. The reason is that fiction is really hard to follow through audio, in my opinion, and from talking to my friends. It's really difficult. It's just hard to grasp. Whereas non-fiction is totally fine. You can listen to a non-fiction audiobook, and I think is similar to reading it in terms of retention of ideas.
Okay, I've got a different question. How do audiobooks affect people's imagination compared to reading?
That's a good question, and to be honest, I don't really know. I've never really thought about it, but I would imagine that if you are reading, you are using more mental, I don't know how to express this, maybe more mental power. So that requires your imagination to be more active while reading. Whereas if you're just listening, you're much more passive in the process. Therefore, you do not need to use your imagination as much. But I don't really know. A tough question. Wow. Okay.
Thanks for talking about audiobooks and books on tape with me. Have a nice day.
And that was a full interactive speaking question with 8 different speaking questions and answers. Now, what do you think of this interactive speaking question? Do you think it's easy, difficult, fun, exciting, scary? Let me know down here in the comments. Also, leave a heart emoji to also show that you've watched this video all the way to the end. Okay, that's it for this video. I really hope it was helpful. Now I recommend you watch this video here because it will help you with a different template called the PPF template, and this is good for the other speaking questions on the Duolingo test. Click here and I'll see you here right now.